Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic and that you're all having a great day. Tell me which cryptocurrency I should be buying today, as I am always buying up crypto. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Once again, hard pressed, as it were, to find any kind of negative news currently within the cryptocurrency space. Something is definitely going on. I do not know the specifics of exactly what it is, but it's getting a little bit weird, and I can't be the only one who feels this way. The last week or so, we've been getting a lot of news about institutions and companies basically taking over the space. I'm not sure if you were here for those videos. The amount of crypto on exchanges is beginning to rapidly disappear. This is usually seen as or taken as a very bullish turn of events within the market when rich people begin to take their crypto off of centralized exchanges. As I've stated 1,500 times before, those coins are not liquid. They belong to you and they belong to other investors who simply have them on the exchanges. But also people are beginning to take them off as well, which usually comes before we have a rapid movement up in the cryptocurrency market. We're getting a lot of accumulation news by whales. We're getting a lot of discussions as to where prices within the cryptocurrency space are going to go next. In very popular news that we've been getting for a couple of days now, if this continues happening realistically for the next week or two, we are going to see heavy movements upward in prices across Bitcoin and altcoins. We've been getting a lot of news about inflows, rapid, heavy inflows to the cryptocurrency ETFs as well. Bitcoin reserves on cryptocurrency exchanges have dropped to their lowest level in more than 6 years. You heard that correctly. As publicly traded companies ramp up their accumulation of the digital asset following the U.S. presidential election. This is according to Fidelity Digital Assets. We went over before, in case you missed the numbers, MicroStrategy had around 200,000 Bitcoin around November. They are nearing right now. I assume this week we're going to hear some other news from MicroStrategy because it's usually weekly. They are very close to having 600,000 Bitcoin. That is one company. There's a lot of people, I don't know if you've seen it on social media, like digitally patting Michael Saylor on the back just because they are now as far as we know, they're the fastest growing and largest corporate holder of Bitcoin. And there are other companies who are announcing that they're going to try and replicate exactly what MicroStrategy is doing. This purchasing power, this purchasing situation, this movement is not stopping. It does not slow down because Bitcoin's price goes down. We've gone over that before. Usually, everyday investors, if you see that Bitcoin's price has dropped, they tend to stop buying or slow down their buying. It is counterintuitive. You usually would want to buy when prices are lower so that when they go up higher, you've made a gigantic profit. However, retail tends to do the opposite. Prices go down, they step away from the market, they get scared because they stand there because they've heard from someone else on Twitter say, wait for the dip. it's gonna dip lower. And then you sit there waiting for a $15,000 Bitcoin. It goes up to 100,000 and all these gigantic corporations sit there smiling. They said, and I quote, "We have seen Bitcoin supply on exchanges dropping due to public company purchases, something we anticipate accelerating in the near future," end quote. Here's a little tweet right here. 2.6 million Bitcoin on exchanges. This is the lowest that we have seen since November 2018. There have not been this little Bitcoin on exchanges since 2018. Over 425,000 Bitcoin has been moved off of exchanges since November 2024. The accumulation does not stop and it will not slow down, that I promise you. Yeah, this will have an immense amount of long-term ramifications for the cryptocurrency space and the market until people, retail, understands what's going on. And I've told you before, quite bluntly, I think that retail's kind of like done in this space. And I mean that in like a very like realistic manner. I assumed over multiple years that there would have been a large amount of knowing or coming to the realization of news within crypto, as far also people outside of crypto seeing what was happening, what was taking place. I told you I have a friend of a friend. He's heavily into finance. And whenever we would sit at dinner and I was talking about Bitcoin or crypto or altcoins, people think that they're hiding their faces as far as like their emotions or what they're thinking. I could tell he thought I was completely insane. Nothing, and I've been telling him since around 2019. Oh, wow, really? Oh, that sounds kind of cool. When I began to screenshot and show him articles, BlackRock, Fidelity, all these institutions getting into the space, he was like, oh my gosh, like it's real, like it's valid. And I was like, yeah, so my words meant nothing, but he needed this type of like reassurance. And it just wasn't just me and you sitting here as I talk into a microphone. But even people within crypto, it's been a gigantic disappointment. How many people threw their money into meme coins, threw their money into Solana, threw it into Tron? Like the list can go on and on and on. Even hearing this news right now, a lot of people still don't really care about Bitcoin. The problem is that you will, and all you're going to have to show for it are stories of you watching YouTube videos of people telling you how much Bitcoin was taken off of exchanges, how low the price was, and how you should have purchased some. But that's also, I was going to say a conversation for another time, but maybe it's also appropriate right now. Yeah, we've had a lot of news about a lot of Bitcoin being taken off of exchanges in the last couple of days. This is why I said if we have another week of news like this and this constantly keeps on moving in, we also know that there are, I think, 2 new companies who are going to be buying up billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin as well. And once again, this is why I said the United States, unless they're secretly buying right now, the United States is never going to get to 1 million Bitcoin. It's literally impossible. This isn't liquid. Anywho, all right, let's move on. Also in news that I thought was going to be far more popular, but alas, here we are. Binance has begun advising governments on cryptocurrency regulation and national digital asset reserves. We heard from Changpeng Zhao when he left the Clink at the end of last year that he was already in discussions with a number of countries, not one, a number of countries who were a little concerned that the United States said they were going to buy up Bitcoin, and that country had no Bitcoin. So they began to work with Changpeng Zhao, Jack Mallers, I think Jack Dorsey, and there's one other person who began to pop up saying that they were actually going to like hang out with people who like ran countries so that they could get information on how to accumulate crypto, what kind of regulation that they should actually have, and how this was going to work. I believe from the speculative numbers that we heard from November to around February, I believe it was over a dozen countries that kept on popping up in the news as to they were talking to someone or something was happening. So now apparently Binance is now helping countries fix their regulatory issues. This is according to a report from the Financial Times. Richard Tang, who took over as Binance's chief executive officer following Changpeng Zhao's resignation, said the company is actively involved in supporting a number of governments with crypto policy development, noting that the United States is way ahead of many other jurisdictions. He stated, "We have actually received quite a number of approaches by a few governments and sovereign wealth funds on the establishment of their own crypto reserves." What was the other news that this was like a week ago? We had some crazy news about sovereign wealth funds also buying up large amounts of Bitcoin as well since November. Yeah, I personally, news like this is like the news that actually matters, at least to me. This is like the big stuff. I know we go over price predictions and other things like that. It usually ends up being the most popular news of the day. But hearing that a cryptocurrency exchange that's only been around 7.5, 8 years is helping countries figure out how much crypto they should buy and what laws they should have in place so that investors actually go over there is incredibly significant. It's always important to look at the bigger picture. I know it's very difficult. Sometimes that's not a joke. I know, listen, that's why I always say we are often told to look in one corner. Pay attention to what the futures are doing. Hey, look over there. Look at what the ETFs are doing. There are outflows. Hey, that one company, they did that thing. And it's like, no, the full scope of this is gigantic. And I personally also, I'm sure you would as well, I wish we had like more in-depth information, but we won't. It comes from the fact that these nations don't want to reveal themselves. They don't want to let their neighbors know that they're doing the exact same thing. If you announce something out loud, that was the thing from I think it was end of November. We had a lot of news. A lot of analysts were like, they were really shocked that the US even announced this, because you usually want to keep something like that very private. So basically announcing, hey, we're going to be doing this. Every other country is like, okay, we can't stand by. And this is why we're seeing all these sovereign wealth funds literally throwing billions of dollars into Bitcoin. This is why we keep hearing that this country's working with this person. I think there were photos online recently of Changpeng Zhao, and I believe he was in the Middle East helping, I think, 3 countries figure out their crypto stuff. And I'm like, yeah, this is all taking shape. This is how you get to hyper Bitcoinization. This is how you step over the US dollars. This is how you get to the point where we currently are right now. So try to remember the broad focus of all of this, how much money is really moving into the space, how many companies and corporations, a lot of people, and it's all that we can do, focus very heavily on hearing like MicroStrategy or MetaPlanet, buying up crypto. Those are just the public companies who are willing to announce that they're doing it. You want to keep that as secret as humanly possible because you don't want to tell any other company, oh crap, we have to do the exact same thing. Let's start buying like 10 Bitcoin a week. You have 100 companies doing that. Bitcoin's gone. And I mean, we're already on track for Bitcoin to completely disappear from exchanges and all these other things. But I guess that's something for the future. That's the Binance is helping multiple countries news. And yeah, Let's move on. Also, this guy does not quit. I don't know what's going on. Arthur Hayes was not in crypto news for like a good 2 years, and now he's popping back up all the time. And I said before, I namely think it's because he's been right. Listen, a grain of salt. He's been right recently, the last like 6 months. He's kind of been spot on with his predictions and where things are going to go. He was, in case you missed it, when we were around originally before, around $95,000 per coin, he's the one who said he thinks that the price is going to go back down to 70 before going back up to 200,000. And everyone was like, you are absolutely insane. And then we fell down to $74,000 and everyone was like, oh, snaps. And then he predicted a couple of weeks ago that we were going to have a rapid movement back over 90,000. And here we are. Former BitMEX CEO Arthur Hayes is connecting the latest U.S. fiscal policy shifts directly to Bitcoin's price rally, predicting a climb for Bitcoin's price beyond $110,000 and even towards 200,000 US dollars per coin. We are expecting in May that a couple of days, literally, we're expecting to hear from Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, that he is going to lower interest rates. How do we figure this out? From Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, from Fidelity, this isn't a joke, from about 16 different analysts within this space, and a number of world banks have all predicted May, July, September, and November as the months with an S that the US Fed is going to lower interest rates. We also recently heard, this was a month ago, from Jerome Powell, that they're going to slow down QT, quantitative tightening. That is to say, imagine, make a fist. Nothing can get through that fist. Now loosen your fist. Maybe some water can get through there. Water being money. Basically, we heard that the European Central Bank, I think, recently lowered their interest rate. China is basically back on the prowl as far as when it comes to printing money. And there was some other economy who also announced that they were also going to be lowering their interest rates. This is an additional knock-on effect from the tariffs. The tariffs are causing other countries to predict that they're going to have lower growth, and therefore the answer when you typically have lower growth is to print more money, to have more money. It sounds crazy because it is. More money to push into the system, and also subsequently to devalue your local currency so that it becomes more attractive for investors and visitors. Think like Turkey a couple of years ago where people were like remember? That was crazy. For those of you who missed it, this was crazy. This must have been 2020 or 2021. There were people from Dubai because the Turkish currency had fallen so much. There were people from Dubai who were going to Istanbul, standing in line at Louis Vuitton because prices were like 70% cheaper. Like that's basically what you get when you devalue your own currency. In a new essay called Ski Cut, like going skiing and then cut. I don't understand why. Hayes detailed his thesis linking macroeconomic policies by the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve to increase liquidity, which he firmly believes bolsters the bullish case for Bitcoin. And here's the tweet right here. In my essay Ski Cut, I discussed the BBC's new toy. The what? What is BBC? I know what BBC is, but I don't think he's talking about that BBC. And then he also said new toy. What? The British birth? Okay. The Treasury buyback and why it will send Bitcoin through 110,000 onwards to $200,000 per coin. He's been saying this for a while, and once again, he's on a roll. So at this point, every analyst is basically saying the exact same thing. He's not saying anything exceptionally magical, but he was one of the few people who were like, yeah, we're going to dip back down to 70 to test a couple of levels, and we're going to move back up. Current price predictions for Bitcoin involve by the time we get to June. Those are the numbers floating around that we will be above $130,000 to $140,000, with many people predicting that by the time we get to the end of the year, we should be around a $250,000 Bitcoin, which makes a lot of sense. It's just more of a, it just has to happen. That's the Arthur Hayes news. And yeah, let's move on. Also in, sure, why not? I mean, I guess, New Hampshire. New Hampshire's move towards integrating digital assets into its financial strategy took a step forward as House Bill 302, which would enable the state to invest in Bitcoin and precious metals, passed its second Senate committee. We're slowing down a bit with news like this. Towards the beginning of the year, we had a lot of news about states within the United States buying up Bitcoin. Many of them, no, one of them has said no. I believe it was Oklahoma. It went to I think a 5-6 vote. They said no. Dennis Porter and Cynthia Lummis seem quite adamant that the other 25 states are going to say yes. Many of them have ratified and or changed what do you call it? Some of their bills. And even some of them like producing multiple bills of the exact same thing, which I also think is a little special. Like remember there was one bill that said like, hey, this state can buy Bitcoin. Another one said it can buy Bitcoin, but only up to 1 million Bitcoin. And I was like, well, you're never going to have 1 million Bitcoin. And then there was another one that said like, you can use 70% of public funds. One said like 69%, and it's like these little tiny differences. I think a lot of it personally is just for show. I think a lot of the people who are putting forth a number of these bills want to be the person marked down in history as the person who got that bill pushed through. So if someone says 60, you say 40. If they say 40, you say 10. The bill goes through, then you know your name is signed on the bill as the person who ended up pushing it forward. The bill, first introduced in January, has now cleared 4 major legislative stages. HB 302 sounds like a 90s boy band. HB 302 began with a 16-1 vote in the House Commerce and Consumer Affairs Committee, followed by passage in the full House on the 10th of April. Full House, huh? On the 10th of April by a narrow 192-179 margin. After being referred to the Senate, the bill was reviewed in its second committee, which issued a favorable 4-1 recommendation on the 23rd of April. It is now poised for a full vote on the Senate floor. I think they're the farthest. No, wait. Yeah, maybe. Apparently, so introduced committee, Chamber 1, Committee 2, Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. So is it Chamber 2 is the last one? I guess that's as far as we've been paying attention, if you haven't seen any of the other videos or these charts, it was foretold to us in January that basically by February, these would all be pushed through. But it seems to be more of a lengthy process than any of us were actually expecting. I believe at the time of me making this video that no state has actually pushed this all the way through. I believed that the guesstimations were Arizona, Texas, or Florida would have already had theirs through, but is maybe New Hampshire is also going to, it depends on when the actual reading for this will be, but cool. Yeah, this is also going to definitely shake things up within the cryptocurrency space once we get actual news that a state has fully enacted this. A lot of weird things are happening within the space. I know I keep saying it's happening all the time, but I don't know. I don't even know where that sentence was lightly going. It's just a kind of, there's so much taking place. There are so few people who are actually paying attention. A lot of my crypto friends, they've kind of just turned to like automatic buys and stuff like that online. So they're buying consistently, but they're not really actively in the market. Everyone's kind of waiting for a really large push up. I see a lot of annoyance as well when it comes to altcoins, because this is typically when we'd be in like a full-blown altcoin season. But once again, as I've mentioned before, it's namely because of the tariffs and the confusion as to where markets are going to go. So fingers crossed, hopefully we get some kind of a hyper resolution for the tariffs. It's also the only thing holding back the stock market now as well. We've gotten indications that the Fed is going to print more money. The other real step that we need to hear is that they're going to lower interest rates, and it's basically sky high from here. But yeah, everything is moving forward, but maybe not as quickly as we assumed that it actually would. Yeah, I think that's going to do it for this video. I do hope that you've all been doing well. Hope you're all remembering to take care of yourselves, going on walks, drinking enough water, doing whatever makes you happy. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.